So when you move in, and you have all your
Christine Fleming is in the kitchen of her neat and tidy Auckland home, opening drawers and cupboards. She hasn't lost anything, and this isn't a cooking demonstration. This is Christine's way of explaining how the disability sector works. She opens the crockery cupboard. That's one part of disability. Her baking dishes, that's another. She flings open a cupboard. There's the saucepans. That's another. Then she gets to her kitchen drawers and pulls out the third drawer down. This, she says, represents those with high and very high needs.
Then you have this drawer. It's all important stuff, but none of it fits anywhere else. It's all individual, it's all different, and it doesn't fit anywhere else. Everyone's got one, and people constantly try to, I'll put it here, and every now and again you get it out and you think, I'll sort that and I'll try and put it everywhere else. And in the end people give up and go, it's that drawer. That is us. We don't fit anywhere else with the other disability groups. We don't fit anywhere else in society, and we're all very different, but all essential. And every now and again people pull us out and go, we're going to fix this, and they try, and then they go, no, too hard, shut the drawer and walk away and leave us again.
Christine is mother to Justin, who has Williams syndrome. It's a genetic disorder which can cause problems with the heart, kidneys and other organs, as well as learning difficulties and intellectual disability. But Justin wasn't given that diagnosis until he was an adult. Until then, they only had a general label of genetic disorder. Only an estimated 200 New Zealanders have the syndrome. Justin is obsessed with planes and music. His room is filled with posters and models of planes.
Yeah, that's a Jimmy Blake plane.
Yes. So that was his, because he gets spoiled.
His condition meant Christine had to struggle to get support while coping with a high needs child. And it's a system, she says, consistently ignores or fails to help those like her son. The symptoms of Williams syndrome affect different parts of the body, so Justin was under an array of specialists: kidney, heart, bowel, gastro, orthopaedic and eye doctors, but no one had overall responsibility. No one took all that information and looked at the total picture or talked to each other.
I could have an appointment in the morning one day and an appointment the next day at outpatients clinic, and then in amongst that there'd be an x-ray ordered. Now, if there was any sort of oversight plan, why couldn't have that all happened on the same morning? So we had one trip in there, one stress for him, seen this guy, seen that guy, had the x-ray, and then we're home and calm for the rest of the week. But it was never like that.
In constant pain, Justin would scream and scream. He didn't sleep through the night until he was 5.5, and then only because he was in a drug-induced coma to stop his seizures. On top of that, he was stressed by operations, needles and medication.
You're so chaotic, it's really hard to step out of that and say, hey, guys, this is shit, this isn't working, you're making our lives a crazy disaster. Can something else be sorted here? Because you're too busy in it to have, and you're not sleeping and you're worried yourself sick because you've got this kid that's constantly trying to die on you, and it's like, so it's just chaos.
Yeah, really fast and slow, and then speed up really hard and not.
Life is organised around Justin, but everything stops immediately if he appears unwell or is unsettled. He can deteriorate quickly if action to resolve problems isn't taken straight away. Leaving the house presents its own set of challenges. He can't be far from a toilet, and because he has celiac disease, Christine prepares all his food separately and takes it with them. And all of this life has to fit into bureaucratic boxes for assessment, for support and funding. Christine's whole life looking after her son is shoved into a bureaucratic description category: personal care.
You can say I'm being a hygiene, something or other, something else. You know, lovely soft labels. I'm cleaning up shit. When he has an accident, it's everywhere. I have poo everywhere. Down his legs, up his back, on his knickers, on his trousers, on his socks, on his shoes, all over the toilet, all over the floor, halfway up the wall, because he's tried to clean it up himself if I haven't got to him in time and he has really bad liquid diarrhea. I don't care what you want to call that pretty. I'm cleaning up a massive amount of poo everywhere. And that is an hour's job, because I've done it so many times, it takes me an hour. Why would I choose
to do that as a lifestyle choice, you know. I do it because he's my son and I love him, and he has a problem with that. He's not doing it deliberately, he can't help it. You know, it is not easy. It is quite often very simple. It is very monotonous. It's very repetitive, but it is not easy.
Christine won't put Justin into care, and though she dedicates her life to him, she has been assessed as eligible for only 22 hours of funding a week. That money comes from the Ministry of Health Disability Support Services. She's financially better off on a benefit. Paying family members to care for their loved ones is by far the cheapest option for the government when it comes to offering support. But it's by no means the only option. There are others, like residential care.
As I'll show you later on, this is all our flatmates that live here. As you can see, there's my photos.
That's Raphael Kibblewhite, who lives at Holt House on Auckland's North Shore. Raphael and his 4 flatmates are looking forward to an upcoming ball for residents of houses run by disabled care organisation Spectrum Care. They live with their cat Kitu and round-the-clock support workers.
And the Spectrum ball this weekend, that looks exciting.
Yeah, everyone's going?
The 5 residents are a tight-knit group who like to watch movies and go on outings together. Raphael works part-time at Wendy's, the fast food restaurant, and as the most recent arrival in the flat, he has the smallest bedroom at the back of the house, but says this is much better than his last.
You get up in the morning, smiling faces, you go out and do heaps of stuff. Over at the other house, we just sit around doing nothing. With me, that didn't really work for me because I'm a guy who likes to get out and play sports and be active, and the neighbours are good. We have a lot of visitors coming through.
Ginny Gizlassen is the house leader at Holt and responsible for managing the residents and carers. She loves the team of people she works with, and they do their best to give the flatmates as many opportunities as possible.
It's about people making choices, their own choices, and about having fun. Ashley in the wheelchair that you met, he did a tandem skydive last year. So it's limited by only what staff feel put the limits on it. The guys make their own choices what they want to do, where they want to go and how they want to do it.
Holt House is owned and run by Spectrum Care, which has about 440 people with both physical and intellectual disabilities in 120 houses across the North Island. It set up a group called the A-Team, 10 people with disabilities who are trained to advocate for others who live in residential homes and advise Spectrum about residents' concerns. One resident says he shifted into a residential home for independence.
I like to move out of my house. It's not because I don't like my parents. It's because I'm all grown up now. So I need to move out, need to experience new things.
Spectrum says most people want to live in their own place with staff nearby to support them. Another option is supported living, which Dunedin man Jeffrey Heckinson took up 8 years ago.
He's usually got a puzzle on the go as well.
Yeah, usually, yeah.
Yes, we heard that Jeffrey loves his camera, loves his phone.
Jeffrey, who has Down syndrome, shares his flat with Joe, who also has Downs, and a fluffy cat called Tiffany. He gets a benefit of $400 a week and is under the care of the Community Care Trust. Jeffrey's mother, Heather, admits it took a long time before she would agree to let her son go flatting, but he loves it.
You know, I made the decision that it would be really good for Jeffrey to go flatting.
Yeah. What did you think would be good about it?
That he'd learn skills, also just to get that little bit of confidence and which he's got, just branch out and be an adult sort of thing.
Oh, you've done your washing?
Yeah,
Good, one.
Other families choose more independent living. But even when families make that choice, that doesn't spell the end of their problems. Becky Moss has severe epilepsy which causes daily seizures. It's not unusual for her to sprain an ankle or even break a leg because of a seizure. She is also intellectually impaired and doesn't speak. Becky lives in a state house in Auckland and has 2 support workers with her at all times, except for 2 nights a week when her mum stays. She's on a benefit, which means she's more independent and financially better off than if she were in residential care. But housing Becky and providing skilled support for her has been fraught with difficulties. Her mother Jan says they've tried every provider in Auckland and twice tried to manage Becky's caregivers themselves, but have always struck the same problem, finding good and reliable staff. Most move on after realising they can find an easier, less stressful job for the same pay. Becky's sister, Heidi Nilsson, who has herself been a care worker, says a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that because Becky has an intellectual disability, the carers don't need to be smart. But that underestimates her sister's abilities and the need to be one step ahead.
Residential care, then when I've worked in that field or when I've visited people, I just get a sense like if you don't see a person as having value in and of themselves, then, it doesn't matter what you're providing. You won't go to the ends of the earth, you won't think outside the square, you won't try to provide something that's unique and that meets someone's needs. You'll just kind of hum along with the status quo, and that's not what people need.
Garth Benny heads the Disability Support Network, which represents the organisations that provide care. He says families often face difficult choices when looking for alternatives to keeping someone at home. With group homes, there can be issues around a person's choice and control over daily life, and he says supported living can also come with problems.
Finding appropriate accommodation is really, really difficult. Finding appropriate, accessible and affordable accommodation that enables good access to public transport, community facilities and what have you is really challenging.
But there is a wider problem too, the lack of representation and advocacy. Parents like Christine and Jan say children like theirs who have high and very high needs, often with intellectual impairment, are ignored by the government and the very disability groups that are supposed to represent them. Christine says when Justin was born, she believed everyone in the system would do their best for him. But her frustration bubbles over as she explains how that belief has been shattered.
They're not listening. It's like, so why waste my energy? And virtually everything Just does now is private. And it's been set up by parents, the activities. I basically do nothing that is government organised or recommended or sorted or dealt with. It's all private. The dance is private, the swimming is private. Everything that we do has been set up either by me or by other parents.
Why do you do private?
Because there's no other option. There's nothing else. There's nothing else for him.
She devoted 20 years of her life trying to educate, inform and lobby for change. But families say when a new disability strategy was created in 2001, it sidelined them and their disabled children. Jan Moss agrees those with high and very high needs are not adequately represented by the 7 DPOs. That stands for Disabled People's Organisations. She says they won't let parents speak.
I think they fought really hard to get what they got, to be consulted. They're on the Convention Coalition, reporting back to the UN, and that's the thing. They send disabled people out to interview other disabled people to find out how life is for them, so they can report back. So how are you going to go and talk to, the likes of Becky?
Non-verbal.
Yep.
And what did they say?
Well, we need to talk to you about that sometime.
The Disabled Persons Assembly is one of the DPOs, and its president, Jerry Pomeroy, rejects those views. She says that's not the organisation's culture.
I'm very sorry that they have that impression, but that is not our organisational culture, and it is not how we work. We are inclusive, we're generous with opportunities for people to contribute, and we're as transparent as we can be, which is pretty out there and quite transparent.
Jerry Pomeroy denies there is a hierarchy within the disability sector, but others disagree, including the Carers Alliance, a coalition of 46 national not-for-profits striving for better support for family carers. Here's their co-chair, Janine Stewart.
Those who do have a voice and can speak for themselves, and they've become very strong in the last few years, setting the approach, the philosophy, the way in which government is responding. And then families who may be the voice for that more complex group, it just don't seem to have had a voice in where things have headed.
Controversially, this has included the idea that only those who have a lived experience of disability can talk about it. That excludes family members who care for those who can't speak for themselves. The Carers Alliance says there's been very little work focused on this group of disabled people. The Voices project looked at this earlier this year. It was a collaboration between the Federation of Disability Information Centres and the Complex Care Group. One parent told the project the disabled people's organisations are a problem.
DPOs have got too big a say. They have a right to talk on their behalf. Generally, they have physical disabilities, intellectually perfectly able. They even have university degrees. They think they can speak for people with intellectual disabilities. Some of them have made a good living out of government funding to speak for the disabled, but they don't speak for the whole group.
The project's author, Lisa Martin, says DPOs have to be significantly governed by disabled people, which automatically excludes those who have a significant intellectual disability or complex communication issues.
There literally is no DPO representing those with significant intellectual impairments, and it's because of that sort of rather tight criteria that unless they can sort of speak for themselves, then they cannot govern their own organisation and hence can't be called a DPO.
I asked Jerry if a family member can have a lived experience of disability. She insists their experience is not the same as that of the disabled person.
I guess as a parent, you're balancing all the... When you have a young child with complex disability, you've got the grief of coping with a child who has a different life than what you had hoped for when you were carrying that child. So there's that to deal with, plus there's the complexities of ensuring that your child will receive the supports and services they need so that not only your child can thrive, but you can thrive as a family.
But try telling Christine Fleming she can't speak for her son because she doesn't have a lived experience of disability.
What do you mean I don't live disability? I do nothing without... Is it okay with Justin? How is he going to fit in with that? How's he going to react to that? Every single bit of my life is controlled by disability. I mean, I don't live it. Like, how can you say that? It's just beyond me.
Jan Moss agrees. She says after 36 years of caring for her daughter, she is more than qualified to speak for her. But she says until there's an acceptance that some disabled people can't speak for themselves, little will change. She says the Office for Disability Issues, or ODI, and Disability Support Services, or DSS, within the Ministry of Health, need to revisit their approach.
If they're going to collaborate with people in wheelchairs who are blind and deaf about what Becky's needs are and her friends, then we're never going to get anything. That's my reasoning behind why we haven't got anything. Because ODI and the DSS and things, because it's PC to consult with disabled people only, that's what they do. And so that's why we just continue to have this same old, and whilst they pay lip service to it at meetings like we've just had.
Laurie Hilsgren is the Secretariat of the Carers Alliance. She says people shouldn't underestimate the role played by family carers who have given up jobs and opportunities to care for someone.
Family carers are a big population of New Zealanders, almost 500,000 counted in the latest census. But because it's work that's easy to take for granted. It's something families have always done. It's something that always seems to just get shunted to the back to deal with later. And the years are going by with, a much more complex society, more cost and responsibility shifting out into the community, onto families. And we are not keeping up with that as a country. And it's a bit frustrating for carers, certainly the hero families who've taken all the human rights cases. It has just taken so long. It's quite mystifying why, as a country, we do not get that we have to look after the carers too, or they ain't going to be there.
She and Janine Stewart, the Alliance's co-chair, say one of the problems is that the Ministry of Health can't define exactly what qualifies as high and very high needs. If they could do that, that would help ensure consistency. The Ministry of Health says it's awaiting the outcome of a pilot project, Manawhakaha, which offers disabled people more choice and control over their lives and will take into account the views of family members. It says the pilot is looking at broadening the options for disabled people, including those with high and very high needs. It's doing this by widening the range of people involved in a disabled person's life so that parents and family are relied on less. It's also introduced what it calls supported decision-making and the creation of meaningful roles for people. Finally, it says it's implementing a personal budget approach that matches resources to the disabled person's plan. Independent disability advocate Jane Carrigan says she has no doubt the pilot will help people who still have the capacity to direct their own lives. But she says it won't cater for those who have high and very high needs, who lack intellectual capacity.
Choice and control is not something, that families have, much less their high and very high needs children have. They both rely heavily on support, and increasingly over the years, and in no small thanks to Enabling Good Lives mantra, these same families have had the sorts of supports they once have been greatly eroded in the promotion of the choice and control concept promoted by Enabling Good Lives.
Meanwhile, families like those of Jan and Christine's battle on.
I do have to watch what he listens to because music affects his mood.
At Christine's house, an Adele DVD is playing on the television. Christine regrets the hours she has spent trying to change the system, saying it's been pointless.
I should have sat on a trend reader book because when I look back now, everything that I have done has just been a complete and utter waste of my energy and my time because I haven't changed a thing. So instead of exhausting myself, instead of spending hundreds of hours over the years battling a system where they're threatening to close down the special education units all the time, which they still are. They're still doing special education reviews. It's still, nothing has changed. In fact, it's got worse since the strategy came out. So I did all of that for nothing.
And she has this simple message for the government: sort out that kitchen drawer.